Not every adventure turns out like you think it would, and that is certainly true for cruise ship excursions. We had debarked the Celebrity Apex that morning, and after traveling all the way from Alexandria to Cairo, and then touring the Muhammad Ali Pasha Mosque, it was time for lunch and the Nile River cruise portion of our excursion. The booking picture had shown a one-level white river boat, a la something you'd imagine from Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile, sailing past Egyptian delta fields and palm trees. This was a much different experience. Our bus took us through downtown Cairo and jockeyed for position near some high-rises, dropping us on the sidewalk near the barge berths. By the time the barge was loaded, I'm guessing with 200 or so cruise passengers, we left the dock for our tour of downtown Cairo. The buffet food was really good, and we were seated by bus number on the first and second floors. While the seating was a little cramped, the service folks were thoughtful and attentive. Not the Nile River cruise I had imagined, but looking out the window at the river while I ate, I thought that it was a great place for a cramped barge buffet, maybe even one of the best places in the whole world. It was, after all, the Nile. I ordered a local Egyptian beer with lunch, a Stella, not to be confused with Stella Artois, and then quickly made my way up to the top deck to take in as much of the river experience as I could. On my way up, I stopped for a moment on the second floor, where I got to see a traditional Tanura dance. Then, all at once, all around me, the Nile River. I would put forward that Livingston's travels through this part of the world to find the source of the Nile were obviously much more exotic and arduous and exceedingly difficult, but finding myself a solo female traveler who started life in an economically disadvantaged part of rural America, where the only time anyone ever traveled outside of the U.S. was to go to war, well, I have to say that I believe my travels to the Nile and on the Nile were much, much more unlikely. Because of adventurers and explorers and travel writers, and even other YouTubers more recently, I was able to see this fabled and storied place with my very own eyes. These were waters that had moved through places like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, the Republic of Sudan, and of course at the end, all around me, Egypt. This 4,000-mile north-flowing river didn't just flow past all of those countries and people and exotic villages and waterfalls and pools filled with hippos and crocodiles. It also flows through our common history as a people. It may sound odd, but standing there, I felt somehow tangentially related to Burton and Speke, Stanley and Livingston, all of the men and women who had historically made the Grand Tour, a kind of kinship with every man and woman who ever stepped foot on a boat in the Nile and had those grateful, hot singing tears spring up and the thought crossing their mind of, my gosh, I'm actually here. We boarded the bus and headed to the next stop, and along the way we saw people celebrating in the streets simply because it was Election Day, a vibrant reminder of how precious and wonderful democracy really is. I've taken a little time to reflect on the Nile portion of the excursion, and while it was different than how I expected it would be, when all was said and done, I'd have to say it turned out perfectly. Herodotus, several thousand years ago, once wrote that Egypt is the gift of the Nile, and he was spot on.